What's going on? Welcome to Play the Man podcast. My name is Brian Majors. This is my co-host Aaron Ainley, and I'm excited today to have my friend, my mentor, and most of all, my pastor, Pastor Andy White, on the show. He's the head pastor of the Legacy Christian Church, and we're excited to have him on and learn little bit more about him, things you might not be familiar with about his testimony in life, and talk to him about issues confronting men in the church specifically. Welcome to the show, Pastor.
Thank you very much.
How you doing today?
Happy to be here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Excited for you guys. This is cool.
What have you thought of the content so far? We're working on it. It's a work in progress, but
I think it's
so far.
great. I think there's real guys talking about real stuff. It doesn't get any better than that.
Cool. Well, how's your weekend?
It was hot, and I'm building a house, and
Yes.
so I spent all weekend working on the deck of the house.
That sounds hot.
It was very hot. I had to stop working because the coating we were putting on the deck was drying faster than we could lay it down, and so it was getting all goobery. And it's like, no, we got to stop.
How hot was it? It was at least
102 at our place.
And you live in the foothills, so
It was hot.
that's blazing.
Yeah, it was pretty hot.
You were putting down like the last part of the deck, or
Yep.
is that
So just like the waterproof coating over the deck.
okay?
So it looks awesome, but just had to stop because it was too hot.
How long have you been working on your house?
15 years? No, long time. We bought the property 10 years ago. Actually, bought the property in 2006, and we started building 2 years ago. So we've been in a building process for 3 years.
Wow. I'm going to be so excited when you're finally...
You and me both.
Time
My
to
wife
nod on
more
that.
than any of us.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
yeah.
All right. What else did you do this weekend?
You know, I I wasn't preaching this weekend, and so I spent a Sunday out in children's church, which was very enlightening, just trying to see what that's like, because we've got some things we want to do there, and I wanted to kind of feel what it was like to be a teacher in there so I can help the teachers be better, and some leadership things need to go on. And so I got to spend some time with some little kids. It was actually really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. I just was reminded how much of a blessing little kids are and their perspectives. At one point, we were just asking about how do you love people, and kids were giving pretty generic answers. And then I asked, how do you feel loved? And their answers just killed me. Just I feel loved when people take time to listen to me. And I feel like almost all of their answers were about people spending time with them and treating them like they're special. And I just broke my heart. And it's like that's what ministry to kids is. It's recognizing who they are and how uniquely they're built and made, and seeing them for who they are. And so it was cool. I really walked away with a lot from Sunday.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know naps are a big part of your Sunday afternoon. Did you get a nap?
Every Sunday. Sundays is the only day that I nap, and I take a fat one. So
How many hours do we get on Sunday?
normally 3.
That's
And
legit.
and I can only do that on Sundays for some reason. I think it's because it's the Lord's Day. It's the Lord's
It's the
Day.
Lord's Day.
But I can go home after Sunday and I can take a 3-hour nap, wake up, eat dinner, watch something with the kids, or hang out, do something, and go to bed at like 9 o'clock and sleep all night and not wake up. Like it's the only time that ever happens. And I usually feel pretty refreshed after that. So yeah, Sundays is nap day.
Cool.
For sure. This Sunday I only took an hour, but usually I get like 2 or 3.
That's awesome. There's nothing better. I got like an hour and a half in, and I was, out.
Dead to the
I
world,
was dead to the world.
but alive in Christ.
Yes. My wife graciously came over at the hour and a half mark and told me that
It's time.
nap time was over. Yeah. So, how was your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't anything too special.
What did you do?
I'm actually trying to remember. I don't really remember much.
Just a blur.
I blacked out. No, I didn't.
Wow, is that good?
It was crazy.
Time.
Uh,
A lot of White Claws. I'm just playing.
Yeah, I think it was just typical weekend. Oh, actually, I worked as why for the first time
Cool.
in a long time.
Because you have a job.
Working on weekends, man. Those jobs.
Where are you working, Aaron?
Oh, we don't talk about that.
No, we really do need to talk about that. So where did you have a job now? So where are you working?
You got a platform.
Raw
right now.
raspberry.
Raw raspberry.
AKA Lululemon.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm now the running liaison. So they're basically attempting to get more men in the store, and so they created a job called the running liaison, and then they hired me.
So
for
they
it.
created a job for you
Essentially, yeah.
because you were what they
Yeah.
had in their mind when they created the job.
You know you're hireable when they create a position for you and say, dude,
Yeah.
Aaron's got a pretty cool job.
Yeah, so pretty much I get to just like primarily go around, talk to people.
Hang out.
Yeah, just trying to get people, specifically men, to get into the store to understand that Lululemon isn't just a female clothing brand. And they actually have really, really, really nice clothes for men for working out. Anything really, anything from like what I do, working out, all the way to running, to yoga, to whatever it is. They have everything.
Did they give you a bunch of free merchandise? Like
Not
they
really.
hook you up?
Yeah, no.
Are you required to wear their stuff when you go do?
No, they're actually they do encourage it. They want you to. They don't demand that you buy because it is expensive. You know, it's quality though. It's super nice. But they do ask that they don't want you like coming in with a big old like Nike shirt on, which makes sense. Like I get that.
That's
So
understandable.
like, but other than that, no, they don't care what you wear. It's pretty. Actually, I feel like I've been overdressed. All the other people I come in, they're all like pretty relaxed. So it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Which I like that kind of culture of people just being comfortable rather than trying to look all good. But
Yeah.
You're gearing up for a competition here pretty soon, aren't you?
yeah, September we have doing a team competition with Buddy Drew. Should be good.
Cool.
CrossFit.
Yeah, it'll be a lot. Normally, like most, like there's a lot of teams from the gym I'm going to, Certus, so it's normally really fun.
My
A lot of
brother's
people.
competing in that as well with the coolest team name
yeah.
ever. We'll pump that later because I want a lot of people spitting out his team name at the event. We'll plug that later. But what's your guys' team name?
So we have an ongoing joke at the gym. Like whenever, for a long time, whenever we were done with the hard workout, we had like accessory work to do at the end. Joe would put on country music, and most of the time it was the band Midland, and they have a song called Gator Boys. So
team
Drew
name
and I are the Gator Boys for the competition. It'll be pretty sweet.
Nice.
So my brother's competing with Pastor Josh, who we had on the show last time, and their team name is an homage to probably the coolest athlete in the history of American athletics, Mike Tyson. And so their team name is Crothfit. So
Pretty freaking good.
So it's pretty amazing. So I plan
And
on being there to support him.
That's hilarious.
And I'm going to say Crothfit as many times as I can.
Nice.
As long as they wear a Mike Tyson T-shirt,
They've got shirts.
They good.
They have
They
shirts.
need to, because otherwise
Yes.
it would
That's
be like
awesome.
So there's a vintage picture of Mike Tyson, like a digital Atari grade image of Mike Tyson on their shirts.
Yeah, I know. Garrett had that shirt.
Yeah, no, he's going to have one made for Josh.
Sweet.
So it's going to be
That's awesome.
Crothfit. So I'm
so good.
particularly excited about that. It's going to be amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it should be fun.
I think I would probably choose a name that I just wanted to hear said over a PA over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, I've already told Garrett, I said,
That'd be
because
awesome.
my brother is not bashful, as you know. And so I say, Garrett, if you need to actively look for as much mic time as you can. And if like, I don't even care how you place. Just get on that mic and go, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Like, just got to milk it.
Just
Oh,
go
man.
for it.
That's awesome.
So
that'd be
I'm
really
excited
good.
about that.
I think I need to pay the lady on the mic just to always
Every
say
time you
like,
say
"Here come the
CrossFit.
Gator Boys."
Oh, yeah.
so the people actually know what we got. I don't know if people are really gonna get it though.
Are there shirts in the mix? Do we have
We're thinking about it. I
Florida
think.
Gator
We
style,
haven't
or
really talked
how are
about
we?
it.
What's the Gator gonna look like?
Well, it's about gator skin boots.
oh,
It's like-
that'd be
that's
cool.
what the song's about.
I like that.
And so we would have to do.
Would you
some
guys
sort
walk
of-
out in a pair of Gators and
If
then
they
and
weren't
then change?
so friggin' expensive, yeah. I think actually, I think Drew already has some.
If we could
I
make
don't
that
have any.
happen, would you guys walk out for your competition? in those boots?
absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd do a workout in the boots.
No. I just want you guys to walk
I feel
out
like you could get
to the
hurt
competition deck in those
if we
boots.
podium.
So any of
Go
you out there that have a
Yeah.
That'd
used
be
pair of
Where's your
Gator
confidence?
boots, what's your size?
I don't even know. I'm a 9.
Size 9 Gator boots. We need to
Gator
know
boy
about
boots.
it, and we need a pair.
Here come the Gator boys. On the wrong side of the track.
I don't think I've heard that one.
It's a good one.
Cool.
All right.
Well, Pastor, I've known you most of my life, and know a little bit about where you come from and your background and your testimony. But for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and what brought you to ministry and related
Boy.
things.
Let's see. I grew up here in Fresno. Actually, this is Clovis, but Fresno, Clovis area all my life. I was one of the eldest of 4 kids. My dad was a pastor. Actually, my dad was a pastor at this church when I was a kid. And I spent most of my growing up being a PK. And so that consequently
Pastor's kid.
was the reason why I did not want to be in ministry at all. Like that was the one thing I think I did not have a personal relationship with Jesus until I was probably 16. So my relationship with Jesus was more environmental than personal, I think, growing up. I knew what needed to happen, and I knew how to do all the Christian stuff and say all the right things, but I didn't have a personal encounter with Jesus Christ until I was probably 16. It was at a youth event, and everything changed. And I wish I still had my Bible from that event, because the guy challenged us. He said, you need to write down this date in your Bible, because the enemy is going to come after you for the rest of your life and call your faith into question. And you need to be able to point to a day and say, no, this was the day. And so I don't know the exact day, because I don't know where that Bible went, but I remember writing that day down in my Bible and having that and really clinging to that. But my life did change. It took a big change. Not that everything got easy after that, but I definitely had a different relationship with Jesus from that point on. I sucked at high school. I was pretty introverted.
When you say you sucked at high school,
Oh, I was terrible. Like socially, I had no social skills whatsoever. I was so introverted. I didn't hang out with people. Scholastically, I was terrible. I'm really, really good at taking tests, and I'm really, really good at faking it. And so I looked like a kid that would be good at school. I just wasn't. And so, and all my teachers really liked me. So I got through high school on good test scores and good relationships with your teachers. And so
that's a pro tip, kids.
yes, keep good relationship with your teachers. I barely got out of high school. It was touch and go, but not that I'm not, I'm not dumb. I'm lazy more than anything else.
But I mean, I think that's not uncommon for people that later on go on to
ministry?
have success. Well, no, not necessarily ministry, but go on to have success. I think that, I think that your performance in school, especially in high school, is kind of a poor gauge of.
Yeah, I just didn't care. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't care about school. It didn't seem relevant to me. There was 2 classes that I did really well in. All through junior high and high school, I took every shop class, every engineering class, every drafting class, architecture class, all of that. And so those classes I got great scores in. And
So you excelled at what you were interested in.
Yeah, if I was interested, man, I was in it all day. And so, but those are the things. I thought I was going to be an architect. That's what I wanted to do with my life. And so I got out of high school, and I had won some competitions, some architect competitions, and that was cool. But so I'm bent that way. I'm my nature is I like to design things and build things. And so that's what I thought I was going to do. And when I got out of high school, enrolled at City College. I was bussing tables at Marie Callender's, and then I was waiting tables at Marie Callender's, and I'd worked there all through high school. And after, I think I was like 2 weeks after I got a credit card, like right out, like, and
How old were
Dad,
you when you
don't
got a
get
credit card?
I was 18.
Always good for an 18-year-old to get a credit
Don't
card.
get a credit card when you're 18. So I think I had a $2,000 credit limit on this Visa, this Wells Fargo Visa card, and I bought a leather jacket.
Nice.
I bought.
Oh, that's
wait.
essential.
I
Wait,
bought.
what leather jacket was this? Was this the leather jacket?
Oh, this was like at that time the bomber jacket was like a big
yeah,
deal.
like the
So-
Top Gun
yeah,
style.
yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
so I bought the leather jacket because I'm going into college, so you got to be
Obvious,
geared up.
standard.
I just bought a Camaro, like not a new one, an old one. Like this was the Berlinetta. It's not the IROC, it's the one below. So there's a Rally Sport, the Berlinetta, which is a small block V8, and then the IROC Z is above that.
What year?
It was a beastly car. It was an '87,
Nice.
and it was a really cool car. And so I had that, but it didn't have a great stereo. So I
You bought that on it with a credit card?
no,
Oh,
I
for
I'd already
$2,000.
bought that. So, but I bought a stereo for that.
That's a cheap
So,
car.
yeah. No, I think I only paid like $1,500 for it because I bought it from a family member, and
Oh, yeah.
he basically gave it to me. So I bought the books for class. I bought the leather jacket. I bought a sound system for the Camaro, and I thought I was all geared up. But I pretty much maxed out that card.
How long did it take you to max out
in a
this card?
week.
Oh,
So I maxed out the card, and then like 4 days later, my dad and I were getting up. I was going to work. He was going to work. We both walk outside, and there are no cars in front of our house. Like the Berlinetta's gone. His Honda was gone, and we were both just sitting there looking at each other like, "Did you move it? Did you no?" And so we went back and we noticed that the kitchen window was open. Somebody had opened up the kitchen window, come inside, took all of our keys and my mom's purse, and stole both of our cars. And so I spent that whole day with my parents canceling things and going to the DMV and getting a new license, and because they took my wallet. That was the other thing. But that changed the course of my life because now I had no books and I had no car, and I had no insurance. I didn't have I just had PLPD on it. So I was hosed, and so I had to drop out of school, and I just worked full time because now I got this fat debt. It took me. This is just for those of you who get credit cards and you're 18 years old. For that $2,000 that I borrowed on that credit card, by the time I paid it off, I was just before I got married was when I paid that thing off. And the total amount was like $9,000 that I paid for the $2,000 I borrowed, because I just interest and it
You
is
still have the leather jacket though, right?
no, it was stolen. Oh, that was the thing.
It got
The
stolen?
stereo was in the car, the books were in the car, everything was in the car. So everything that I spent that money on, I paid $9,000 for something I never
did
used.
you ever
I
get
la-
the car back?
No.
I'd
No.
laugh so hard if that was like your parents just got rid of it to teach you a lesson. Like, don't buy credit cards. Don't get credit cards.
No, that's
$9,000
it was terrible.
later.
It
We'll
was
do a
terrible.
separate podcast on finance. but
Finances, and
as-
I'll be your object
As a
lesson.
general rule, yeah.
Don't get a credit card.
Well, get one credit card, keep the balances super low. Use
Pay it off every month.
Pay it off every month. Do
When
not pay the minimum payment, people. That's how you
just
get
pay it off.
That's how they get you.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so that changed the course of my life because now I had to go back to work, and I never went back because I ended up working full time, just trying to pay off this $9,000 in a credit card debt that I had. I got in a little trouble with the IRS for a little bit as a very young person because I wasn't paying taxes, and I was like, "Oh, you're supposed to pay taxes? What?" So I had to pay that off. So I worked a lot. And then I ended up starting a business, and I was working at Marie Callender's, and a friend of mine and I, we started. One night the cleaning crew didn't show up, and our manager said, "Hey, how about I pay you two to clean the restaurant tonight?" I'm like, "Well, how much are you gonna pay us?" And he said, "I'll pay you like $200." I'm like, yeah. So we busted out. We cleaned the whole restaurant, and we realized, man, we could make some serious money if we started doing it. So we started a business called Old Norge Facility Maintenance,
Okay.
and which is a
now-
reference.
Yeah, you're gonna have to break this down.
There's a reference. There's an old Saturday Night Live sketch with Dan Aykroyd, where he would go and he was fixing this old refrigerator, and he bends over and he said, "Oh, this is an old Norge." And he bends over and he's got this butt crack that's like that long. And it was just, that became old. That's what an old Norge was in my circle of people that I knew. So we thought it was hilarious because these corporate offices were writing checks to Old Norge.
These checks were literally made payable to Old
to Old
Norge.
Norge. Yeah, we
That's
went and got
awesome.
a business account for Old Norge facility maintenance.
Google the sketch, by the way.
And
It's
we
worth
laughed
it.
every time we got a check. We'd laugh. I still have checks that were written to Old Norge facility maintenance, which is hilarious. But we had a logo, and the logo was this guy that was like this little cartoon guy. But
Please tell me the logo was on your checks that you guys had.
no, we didn't.
Okay.
We weren't that prosperous. But we did that for years, actually 2 years. And we ended up doing other restaurants in the area. But out of that, that got kind of old because we worked all day, and then we'd go and work all night, and then we'd sleep and go back and do it again. And so there was about 2 years where I just worked like crazy. I don't know where all that money went because I don't have anything to show for it. I just worked really hard.
Probably that credit card.
Yeah, that was part of it. But then I think I spent a lot of money on climbing gear and car stuff, and I don't know. I didn't save a penny.
You were into climbing for a long time, weren't you?
For a little bit, yeah. I wouldn't say a long time, for about 3 or 4 years. But so that happened, and then a lady came up to me one day. I was washing the windows as part of the deal for the restaurant, and she said, "Hey, would you wash the windows at my house?" Another thing that changed the course of my life, because I went and washed her windows at her house and realized I made $100 an hour doing that at this lady's house. So I'm in the wrong line of work. So I ended up starting my friend left town. It was just me doing the restaurant. So I stopped doing that and just started washing windows. And that's when Window Pro was born. And so I had a commercial window washing company from 97 until almost 96, so about 10 years. 97 till 2006. So yeah, so it was a long time, and we did that for a lot. You actually worked for me.
I did.
We did pressure washing, and we cleaned awnings, and we washed windows. A lot of restaurants. Most of River Park was our customers, and that was great ministry training ground for me. I spent every morning from like 4:30 until 11, just by myself, generally doing windows, and did a lot of praying. When you're by yourself doing something that's monotonous, you have a lot of time to think. I had a lot of relationships with customers that I still have today, people that just needed to know Jesus, and I got to spend time with them and do things for them that helped them, and it was cool. I really feel like, honestly, that was some of the best training for ministry that I could have asked for. I learned a lot about trusting the Lord. I learned a lot about people and just what it means to be a Christian in a business environment. And so I did that. But while I was doing that, that's when I'd gotten married in 99, and I knew that I was called to be in some type of ministry, but I didn't want to be a pastor. That was the one thing I did not want to do. I don't want to be a
You knew
pastor.
ministry at that point, but not pastor.
I grew up in a family that served, and so serving in the church was normal. And if you didn't serve in the church, something was wrong. So that was I expected that my life would be a life of giving back to the kingdom and giving to the Lord and doing whatever He asked me to do. And so that was expected. That was what I expected from myself. But I did not want to be a pastor. And I told the Lord, I'll do anything you want me to do. I just don't want to be a pastor because I knew what that meant. I knew what that would cost my family, my wife, my kids. And I just did not want to pay that price because it's a beast. It's not an easy life.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that for my children or myself. But so we got married. My best friend was working at the time. He was the youth pastor, and my wife and I were working with him and his wife running the youth ministry. And then he left for seminary, and they asked me to take over the youth group. You were in the youth group at that time.
Was.
And so I took over the youth ministry and loved it. It was a great time. It wasn't paid; it was just volunteer. But I would go work in the morning until 11, and then I'd go home, take a shower, eat some lunch, and go to work at the church office from noon to 5.
How long did you do that?
10 years.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, long
So you're
time.
running a full-time business,
Hmm.
and you're essentially a full-time youth pastor.
Yeah, I was working. I was working, doing full time things, and I was getting a little stipend there after a while.
But
Like,
for 10 years.
For 10 years. Yeah.
That is nuts.
But that's what happens when you love something. Like I really loved. It was refreshing to me. Like when you're if you're doing something for the kingdom and you are getting burned out, you're doing something wrong, because that was why I got up at 4:30 in the morning, was so that I could go to campuses to be with kids, because that was where I felt like God was using me in my life, and I was so invigorated by that and refreshed by that. That's what made it all worth it, was because God was doing great things in the lives of people like you and Pastor Josh. There was just, I don't know, I was partnering with God to do things that were bigger than me, and that was cool. And so I was addicted to that. So, yeah, 10 years.
Wow. Well, I want to backtrack just a little bit, because I like to ask every married man that comes on, how'd you meet your wife?
I met my wife. She was going to Fresno Pacific. My friend that was the youth pastor at our church, they all went to Pacific. And I was
Go
there.
Sunbirds.
Sunbirds. I was there so much at Pacific that people thought that I was a student. And so, and because people thought I was a student, I got invited to all of the things that happened on campus. So I would go on school trips. I would go to their
Those FPU Ragers.
Yes. So if they had, like, I was a module dad for like the dorms there. They call them modules, and so there was
Wait, you were module what?
module dad. So
You're gonna have to unpack.
okay,
that one.
so you got kids that are on campus, and they'd have older people who are not students come and be, I don't know, like mentors to the younger students. And they called them module dads, and they usually, like, it was a module dad and a module mom for each building on campus. So I did that every year for a long time, and my friends were all students, and so I was involved in everything. And a friend of mine, there was a trip going to San Francisco. It was a missions type trip. And he said, "Hey, you want to come?" I said, "Sure, but I don't want to pay for it." He goes, "Oh no, the school's paying for it. It's free for students." And so I went because everybody thought I was a student, and it was fun. And so I went on this trip. Fresno Pacific paid for it. Thank you, Fresno Pacific, for changing my life. But on that trip, I met my wife, and she was. It was called an urban plunge, where we're just out there to learn what it's like to be like Jesus, and to be with the least of these, and to enter into situations that you normally wouldn't put yourself into.
So a lot of homeless ministry.
A lot of homeless ministry, a lot of ministry to drug addicts, a lot of just experiential things, just trying to get sheltered Christian kids out of their little bubbles and put them into real world situation where their faith really matters. And so that's what the trip was about. For everybody else, for me, it was about connecting with my wife. She was on that trip too. It was great. God did a lot of cool things, but at the end, she was outside. At the last day, she was outside by herself, and she had this, I just remember it so vividly, this red yo-yo, and she was out there and she's doing these yo-yo tricks. And I just remember looking at her thinking, that girl's rad. Like, I don't know what it was about her.
Rad back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's my language. So I was a child of the 80s.
Yeah. That's
so
awesome.
they,
Gnarly.
I don't ever use that one, but so she's out there doing the yo-yo thing and doing all these tricks and stuff, and I was mesmerized. And I came over and I said, "Hey, you got to show me, like, how are you doing these things?" So she's teaching me yo-yo. Total reversal. Like, usually it's like the guy doing something, the girl comes over and says, "Hey, can you show me how to do that?" No, for me, it was the opposite. So I've got this girl, and she's teaching me how to do yo-yo tricks. And we just clicked, and we started talking about stuff. We found out throughout the rest of that trip that we were both scheduled to go on a missions trip with the same organization, the Celebrant Singers. And I was going to be sound technician for the celebrant singers, and she was going to be a sign language interpreter for the celebrant singers. And so we were the two celebrant non-singers, and that was something that we had in common. So we both were supposed to go do that. We kind of bonded over that, and we actually got put on the same team for that summer. We were both supposed to go to Austria, Croatia, and Slovenia together on the same trip. We felt convicted because we were dating, and we felt like it'd be kind of dishonest to not tell our leaders that we're dating. So we sat down with our leaders and said, hey, we're dating. They were so cool about it. And we thought, oh man, that went so well. Like the next day we got a letter saying, we're going to separate you. And so she ended up going on another team, and I went on the original team, and it was great. We had a good summer, and there's a whole other stories about that, but that's how I met her.
Ended up getting married.
Ended up getting married,
Cool.
and it was a lot of stuff happened in between, but that was that yo-yo changed my life. So
Now you've got 2 kids. And
2 kids. I've got a teenage daughter who just started college, and a teenage son that just started his sophomore year,
that is insane.
high school. Yeah.
I remember when Megan and Aiden were both born. So, yeah,
Yeah, you're getting
Wow.
up there, bro.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not getting up there.
So yeah, that's how I met her. Man, what else?
So when did you know? So you knew you wanted to be in ministry probably around when you got married. I remember that.
Yeah.
In '99. At what point did you finally decide you were done kicking against the goads, so to speak? Like you knew you were going to be a pastor.
Well, I knew I loved doing what I was doing with youth. I wanted to do that forever. Like that was so much fun. And young people are so great because they haven't fully decided who they're going to be yet. So you really get a lot of influence, and you really feel like you're making a difference in their life. And it's not the same sometimes with older folks. It feels like they're a little more set in their ways. They don't change as fast. Young people, they decide that they want to be different, and they'll change. And it's really, if you're an older person and you feel like your life is stale, go work with young people. They will inspire you. They change so fast because they see something that they want, and they will go after it. So I wanted to work with them forever. God had other plans for me. The church actually was growing, and I got to a point though where I realized I couldn't keep doing that. 4:30 in the morning to 11. I couldn't do both. My wife wanted to stop working, and so it was something needed to happen where she didn't have to work, and I could easily I was making good money washing windows and doing that. That company was growing. I had opportunity to buy another company. Actually, I had opportunity to buy several companies. I had the money in the bank. We could have bought that. We would have been making $200,000 a year easy.
Whoa.
without breaking a sweat. Yeah,
I did not realize your business grew that much.
Yeah, well, so I had a business that was doing great. Me working essentially part time. And if I'd worked full time, I could have been making 6 figures without even breaking a sweat. We had the opportunity to buy other businesses that had employees and trucks, and we could have been doubling our income. And all that happened at the same time that Pastor Pete asked us to come on full time. And we knew what that meant. That meant you're not going to make any money. Nobody goes into ministry to make money. If you do, you're going in for the wrong reasons. But we felt like, let's pray about it. So they asked us. I told them, hey, we can't keep doing this forever. My wife wants to come home. I feel like a responsibility to the Lord for that to happen. I need to go full time over here. I'm still going to work with kids, but I just can't do it as much. And they said, well, actually, we've been thinking and praying about asking you to come on full time. So that kind of threw me for a loop. So my wife and I went away to go and pray about it, and we're just seeking the Lord because we didn't know, and we knew we loved these kids, and we knew that we loved what we were doing, but doing it full time, that was a whole nother thing. We went to Cambria, just took a weekend to go, and we went to this little church up on a hill above the town, and it's a little church, maybe 40 people, 50 people, and in the middle of the service, the pastor looks at me, and it's like something transpired. Like he looked at me like he knew something. I was like, oh man. After service, he comes up to us and he said, the Lord told me that you are here asking because you're trying to make a decision about being in ministry. Like, come on, like there's
hint.
no way. And he said, the Lord just wanted me to tell you that he's got it all under control and that you can do what you feel is in your heart to do. And he is going to be there and he'll bless you. Didn't tell me yes or no, didn't say take the job, just said, this is what the Lord said. Like, so I felt like we had the option, and the Lord was so precious in that. Just, I never felt manipulated or cajoled into the job. It was like, if you do this, I'm going to be with you and I'm going to bless you. And so we knew at that point that the answer was yes. But that meant that all of the other things that we had planned were never going to happen. So at that point, the goal was to work really hard, save money, so that we could build our own home. That was the goal, like one of the goals. And we realized, okay, I'd always wanted to build my own home, and we realized, that's just never going to happen. You're never going to be able to do that as a pastor. Could not wrap our mind around how that could possibly be. So I remember being in the car, and my wife was driving, and I remember making the conscious decision to let that dream go. And
Just gave it up.
Just gave it up. And we walked away. And that's the cool thing about the Lord is when you give things up to him, he has a funny way of bringing those things back around. But so we started ministry, and we worked as we were interns for a couple years, and then we were ordained in 2006, and we began to do more than just youth ministry. And about the time our daughter was getting ready to go into junior high, we had to bow out, and so Pastor Josh took over the youth ministry at that point, and then we started doing college, and then that blossomed into eventually being in full-time lead position of the church. Just one thing after the next, just saying yes to the Lord. And I think that's been this kind of I guess my testimony is just saying yes to the Lord whenever he asks me to do something. I wish I could say I always say yes right away, but I think my life has been marked by saying yes to him, and I think we've been blessed. And then the Lord blesses us in return in ways that just surprise me. So
that is crazy. So you gave up potentially a 6-figure job to go into ministry and make
nothing.
Maybe it's not glamorous, make pennies.
Yeah.
You gave up the dream of building a house. And I think that's one of the great things about the Lord is when you say yes to him, you give your wants and desires over to him. It's not because he wants to say no. It's just sometimes because he wants to say yes in his timing. And so now you're on the back nine of completing a dream that you thought was completely gone.
Yeah.
Around 13 to 15 years ago.
And it's like it's not even like, I don't think I could have wrapped my mind around just how much God has blessed us in that. I mean, we live on 40 acres in the foothills. The house is, I got to design my own home and build it. Like, you just can't, I could not have planned that. We had no idea that God had those things in store for us, but I don't know if those things would have been there if we had not said yes. And I feel the Lord's He's always surprising me with how much he will bless willing people.
Well, that's a pretty cool testimony.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you being willing to come on and share with us and be transparent. I think it's comforting to know as a member of this church that there's a level of genuineness in that. And that I remember Window Pro. I did not realize you walked away from that kind of income. So that's even a level of transparency you're sharing with everyone basically. I didn't even know about you. I've known you for years and years and years.
Funny story about Window Pro. Brian used to work for me, and he would do pressure washing. And we had this trailer, and we would go. I particularly needed his help when we would go to Merced, and we had like a couple restaurants, and I had to bust them out before the restaurants opened. So we started really early. And in the back of the trailer, there was a water tank, and there was a pressure washer in there and a water tank. And
Think about where this is going.
messing with Brian has always been one of my favorite things in the world to do. And as his youth pastor and as an employer at times, but we're getting ready to head home. We've worked all day. We're super tired, and we're getting ready to head home. I said, "Hey, Brian, will you jump back in the trailer and drain the tank, because I don't want to drive with all that water. Just drain it out in the ground." And so I watch him go back, and I'm watching him in my rearview mirror, and I watch him open up the side door of the trailer and get in. It's an enclosed trailer. Get in, and the door is still open, and I gun it. And the door slams closed. You could only open the door from the outside. And so door slams closed, and I could hear him banging around there. So I just drove like a madman all over the place, jerking the wheel right and left, and I could hear him banging around in the back, rolling around back there with all this gear in the dark. He can't see. It's pitch black in there. I laughed so hard. I felt so bad.
There's a certain point at which I just kind of surrendered to the fact that this was going to last as long as he was sufficiently amused. So I think I just grabbed onto something and just accepted that this was the reality for the next 5 minutes or so. So that wasn't as good as though I remember another friend of ours that we'll leave anonymous for the sake of the format, and he was pressure washing for Pastor Andy as well.
Yes.
He is I don't want to say particular. I don't want to say prima donna. He's particular. I guess
He's clean.
He's very clean.
He likes to be clean.
He's a little OCD, and I love him, and he would admit that. And so he's pressure washing for Pastor Andy in the area they were pressure washing in. Merced was, I mean, it was an okay area, but there was still a decent transient population. And the hose that we used to pressure wash on was it a 100-foot hose?
Yeah, about 100 feet.
At least a 100-foot hose. So you would pressure wash this entire property, and at the end you would have to coil this up. Well, as we know, homeless people don't always choose to relieve themselves in facilities, and so he's winding up this hose and ends up getting covered in human fecal matter.
Because the hose dragged through somebody's waist.
That's nasty.
So he's covered. Like he is
all over his hands. He thinks it's mud at first. He thinks it's dirt or mud, which is normal. But then he smells it.
And so he quit on the spot, right?
Well, he couldn't quit.
No. But this is the best part. He quits right there. He goes, "I'm done." And he's this is his only ride back to Merced's.
Right.
50 miles away from Fresno.
Well, he's a teenager. He can't quit.
But it was great. He quits right there, and then his solution to the problem was to blast it with the pressure hose. So I don't think you have to know a lot about hydraulics to know that if you blast a piece of that, it's going to fly back at you. So what was a solution has now resulted in his entire face being covered.
Yeah, it just got
with
worse.
That. So it was just a snowball of
I was inside finishing up, and I was in one of the windows, and I was finishing up washing a window, and I remember this individual coming up to me on the outside, holding up his hands with poop all over his face, and he's like, "This is feces! It's feces!" And he's like screaming at me, and I just started laughing. "It's not funny. It's feces. I quit." I said, "We're done already, dude. That's no big. Like, fine, quit. It's okay."
It was great. As that was like that was the only like shredded dignity he had left to cling to was, "Hey, I can at least quit this job." I don't know what his plan was after that because
he was stuck with me.
Home. But if you're out there, buddy, love you, and I'm sure you remember that with fondness.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. You've worked for me, but no feces.
No feces.
Yeah, you've done some work for me.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's all done now, though.
All the stuff that you helped me with, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a good worker.
Stop.
You are.
You're just saying that.
No, I'm not. You really are a good worker.
We used to, my parents, we used to all do like all sorts of projects at home.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just, anybody that was in the house was, "All right, you're working." Like, so we would have friends over and stuff. And one year was pretty close to when we had first kind of moved into our home. My parents' house in Clovis, down from the foothills, came into Clovis. So like, we're putting up a whole new fence around. Well, we didn't put up the fence. My dad hired a company that would put it up. It was pretty nice at the time. And then we were gonna stain it because that would save a ton of money if you stain it yourself.
Right.
Because otherwise they're out there for who knows how much longer to do it. So we're out there, like, everybody has their job. I remember we had family friends over, and they just, it's like, my parents are, yeah, come on, let's go. They're just like
Put
over
in
there
work.
to hang out with us, and we're like,
That's awesome.
we're going to work.
I like your
Well, it
parents.
turns out they ended up going home and talking to their mom. We're like, no, like, let us know when they're doing that again. We'll go and help again. They were all excited about it.
Wow.
Because like we were just out there all hanging out. It was like hilarious.
That's
But it was
awesome.
one of those things. Like we started, like people would come over, like friends. I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, you want to
Your
help?
parents are genius.
Can I go work at
Jesus.
Aaron's, Mom?
It was like that. Yeah, it's just funny. Just one of
Yeah.
those.
I
Things.
exploited a lot of my youth group relationships for, I mean, I paid them, but
We were well compensated.
yes, there was a lot of youth work going
Sometimes
on.
there was a breakfast in the mix too. So
And it was cool because I had an hour. It was like killing two birds with one stone because I'd had an hour there and an hour back to like find out what was going on in their life and, you know, talk about stuff. And it was cool. I enjoyed that.
all joking aside, Pastor Andy is one of the most intentional people I know, if not the most intentional, and that's something I've always appreciated about you.
Thank you, brother.
So, this is a podcast that caters to men. We're looking to provide resources to men and deal with issues directly related to men, and specifically men in the church, although we do want to have and discuss topics related to men in general. But men in the church is kind of where we focus the majority of our attention. If you were to zero in on it, just changing gears a little bit, what do you feel is the number one issue confronting men in the church right now in 2019?
Well, I think men. I think not just men, but it focuses on men, but it affects everybody, and that's the issue of fatherlessness. There is a glaring lack of fathers in the lives of men, and when you talk to men, the men who are struggling the most, usually there is a lack of a father figure that had some major impacts on them. And your dad is, I think, probably one of your first representations of God in your life. And I know that for me, my dad was that, you know, your first thoughts about God, and God even refers to himself as a father and relates to us as a father. So it's just a very natural thing for us to look at God through the lens of our own fathers. And I think just in general, the attack on the father role in our culture, and you see it in television and movies, you see obviously the effects of it in society, but I think the degradation of the father as the head of the home, as the priest of the home, as the covering of the family, that role and it's being removed from the lives of men is probably one of the most detrimental things, I think, to men in general, and perpetuates the fatherlessness as you go. And so fatherlessness is a perpetual and exponentially growing problem, because for every child that's born without a father figure, Christian, we're not even talking about Christian or not, just fathers in general, when that role is not there, those kids then, if they go and have children and they have children, we are seeing an exponential problem. And I really feel like, all honestly, I think that you could really pin a lot of the social woes that we are seeing right now, certainly with the school shootings. I mean, I don't know the stats, so I'm not going to quote stats, but I would be willing to bet that if you were to look at those young men who all share a lot of common characteristics, I'm willing to bet that fatherlessness is one of those characteristics.
Well, from a practical perspective, I can tell you that as being in law enforcement, I'd put it at least 75-80% of the issues that I deal with on a day-to-day basis criminally can be tied back to some form of the absence of a father or a father figure in the lives of the people I come in contact with.
And video games.
And video games.
And video, yeah.
Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
That was the big thing when I was young.
That'll
It's like,
corrupt your
don't
children.
let your kids play Grand Theft Auto.
You know what helps that too? Dad. Your dad walking in saying, hey, turn that off.
Not cool,
Yeah.
bro.
Do
What-
you?
oh,
I'm
sorry,
sorry. No,
go
go ahead. Go ahead.
What would you say is specifically for a father to a son? What would you say is the most important? If you could just give one piece of advice to either a new dad or a dad that's trying to be a good dad or intentional dad, an actual, not just
Well,
a physical father, but an actual.
You just said it. It's the word intentional.
Okay.
Like, I think the idea of it's real easy. I mean, just as men in general, you can go through your entire life and just things happen around you and happen to you. You could have children and never really take the opportunity. Next thing you know, they're gone. Like my kids, I feel like it was a blink and they're in high school and graduating. And I think the most important thing for anybody becoming a dad or being a dad is taking the time to be intentional with your children, meaning that I have to schedule time. I mean, it sounds like, oh, a good dad just does things naturally. I don't think that's true. I feel like I schedule time with my children, and I have to consciously think about, okay, how can I be intentional with my kids right now? I mean, just the other day, like Aiden was playing video games, and he was playing Grand Theft Auto. No, just kidding. But he was playing. I remember it was like Black Ops 3 or something, and I suck at video
You
games.
let him play that game?
I do. But he was playing, and I said, "Hey,
awesome.
I had a bunch of stuff to do, but I realized, man, it's been a little bit since I've sat down and like spent some time with him doing what he likes to do. We're around each other all the time. He has to work for me all the time. He's gotten a real education on how to build houses, but so I just sat down and I spent an hour and a half that I really didn't have if I looked at it from a get it done perspective, to just hang out with him and play video games. But I know that was important to him because we sat there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we were playing versus each other. He was slaughtering me over and over again, but it was hilarious and it was fun. And it was just time. And you have to be intentional about the time that you spend with your kids and investing in them. And that is the one thing that if I could tell every dad, you need to make time to be intentional with your children and to talk to them about things that are important, and force yourself to talk about things that you may not be comfortable with, but they are dealing with, and ask them just questions that, like, hey, are you dealing with this at school? Watch the news with your kids. Like Aiden's real into the news and what's going on in the world. It's been great because when we have an hour or 45-minute drive to school, or 30 minutes, depending on who's driving. And, in that 30 minutes, just asking questions we talk about politics. He's real into Ben Shapiro right now. And
Shapiro's awesome.
yeah,
I'm totally biased. Sorry.
So, but we just talk about the things that he's dealing with, but we could just as easily sit in that car and be silent for 30 minutes every day.
Well, I think I don't want to spend too much time here because I know you've got a schedule for the rest of the day. But what if we talk to our kids about things like all the big hitters: violence, sex, politics, so many things that the churches remain silent on, and something's going to fill the vacuum, in my opinion. And I think that's one of the great failures of the church, and men in the church specifically. I think over the last probably 30 years. I'm going to try to be careful about the way I ask this question, but it's something that's been on my mind lately. Do you feel like men in the church as a whole have begun to vacate or fail or feel like they need to refuse to fill the role of the head of their household, the mantle that comes with being the head of their household and the leader of their household?
I do think so. I think that men being men, the biblical men that are providers and coverers, and I think we've advocated a lot of that role to women, to our wives, and it's really not what God intended for them to be, and that, I think that can be, some people could take issue with that, and obviously there are situations where mom is the head of the home, but that goes back to fatherlessness, and dad's not being who they're supposed to be. And I really firmly believe that it is a calling to be a man.
Huh.
Like you can be male.
Explain that for us.
Being male is something that you are, but to be a man, the way I define being a man, I think that's a calling that we walk into, and we step into that role as a biblical man, and every man who follows Jesus, I believe, has that calling on their life to be the kind of man that is a reflection of Christ in their marriage and God in their home, and that's not a complex. That's a calling, and I think that our children and our wives. I know that for my wife, she came from a very broken home. Both the parents got divorced real young, and so lots of brokenness there. And there's been so much healing in her and my children just because of who God has asked me to be. And I'm not doing anything other than just saying yes to the Lord when it comes to my kids, my wife. That means stepping into things that are maybe uncomfortable for me, but I know the Lord's going to meet me if I step into that, and the Lord will meet you. If the Lord's asking you to step into something and you do it, you're not going to do it perfect, but just you doing it, just you stepping in and saying, you know what? I probably suck at this, but God's called me to do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to step into that. And when you do, you'll see God be God. And I think a lot of men, we shy away from things that we're not good at because we don't want to suck at them. We don't know how to relate to our children. We don't know how to. I can't tell you how many women I've talked to who never felt loved by their dad. Not because their dad wasn't a great guy, but because he didn't know how to relate to them. He just didn't.
You just didn't enter
He
it
just
at all.
didn't.
Yeah.
And so they filled that vacuum with other men because, but if, I don't worry about my daughter at all, honestly, because she's not looking to fill that void in her life. Like, she's a beautiful girl. And I've watched her, I watch young men watch my daughter. Like, she was on the swim team. I would watch her. She goes on the pool deck and she's turning heads. I have no worries about her because, there are guys that just need not apply because they're not. She's looking for something. She's not trying to fill a void because there's fatherlessness.
Yeah.
She's getting what she needs from her dad, and she's getting more of what she needs from her heavenly Father. But all of those relationships are so connected, and I really, you can trace all these things back to fatherlessness, intentionality, and what you're willing to do.
I think that you can, and I love that you said that because I think that for so many guys, it's so hard for us to, and myself included, it's so hard for us to figure out that you do not have to have all the answers to try and to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I try to stay away from the Christian speak on this show, but there's so much more grace, or you get so much more of a pass for at least trying than for doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll probably be more successful if you actively try and enter in, and at least you're giving your best effort to try to be intentional and engage with your kids, your wife, your home.
I think one of
And
the
if you
most
didn't-
important things to go with that, though, is that a lot of people, and especially like we're talking about men, but really anybody, they have this mentality that they need, like they can't make mistakes, or if they do, like
Right.
that's one of the reasons they don't even try. But in reality, like, if you can go into, I wish, I work on this for myself, and I wish I had this growing up with my parents, or with just the mentality of, like, hey, like, being able to tell somebody, like, I don't know what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
like, let's do this together,
Right.
being able to just open that door and say, hey, we're gonna do our best, we're figuring this out, like, don't, because otherwise you get a lot of fathers and dads and who they completely just shut off and close off because they're like, I don't want to do it wrong.
Right.
But in reality, like, relationship is relationship, and I feel like if it's going to be relationships that hurt us, it's going to be relationships that heal us.
All relationships are going to hurt you at some point if they're intimate. And I think what you said, Brian, is important because, if you are failing because you're trying, your kids know you suck at being a dad. Like, my kids know that. They know that. They see me trying and my feeble effort sometimes. Like, and my wife knows that I get it wrong, but she does see me try.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying and they see me trying and they see me being honest about the fact that I don't know. I just had this conversation with my daughter a couple days ago. I just told her, I said, I feel like you're growing up so fast I don't know you.
Yeah.
And what can we do? What can we do? Because I don't want to miss out on who you are. And so we made some plans to, like, when she's in school, we're going to have lunch, and I don't have a plan beyond that, but she knows that I'm trying to have a relationship with her. And my son knows I'm trying to have a relationship with him. I don't have to be good at Black Ops 3. I don't have to be good at being, a husband. I don't have to be romantic, just trying. And I think watching a man try is a man being intentional, and that has its own value just by itself.
And I've learned that. I've only been married 2.5 some odd years, but I've discovered that I get so much more equity with my wife by just making the effort. This morning was case in point, and I think it's so hard for men to grasp because we're just built different than women, and I think the same can be said for our children, though I'm not a father. I made the bed this morning, and that was just
bonus.
I mean, man, you know how much
Love
mileage I got
language.
out of just making the bed. But my wife saw I was trying. I was trying to serve her, and that little gesture. And I do other things throughout the day to try to communicate love to my wife. But she, like Pastor Andy said, she knows that I am innately incapable of being everything she needs. But when I make the effort, that communicates more love to her than anything else.
Yeah.
So, if we could really quickly, if you have one, we're going to ask you to package this up really simply in like 2 minutes because that's fair. If you could, one thing the church can do, men in the church specifically, to combat this epidemic of fatherlessness, as quick a summation as you can, what would it be?
I would say when you see someone, even if it's not your child, who is in need of a dad, you get to be that. Every man can fill the father role. I know some great dads who have no children, but they will take the time to invest in a kid. And that kid can be 40 years old because every person has a little kid on the inside who needs to hear their dad's voice say, I'm proud of you. I believe in you. I think you got the goods. And I know that I still need that. Yeah. And I need that. I need Jesus with skin on him sometimes, and we as men don't ever stop needing that. And I know 60-year-old men who've been in ministry forever, and they still need to hear another man say, "You got the goods. I believe in you. You can do this." And so, even if you don't know how to do something, encouraging other men to be men. When you see men doing things that are godly and need to be repeated, saying, hey man, that's awesome. When you see a good dad, if you see a good dad in the store, like I really have been trying to do this lately, when I see men doing things that like I know take intentionality, just stopping them and saying, hey, dude, you're a good dad. Good job. And man, guys get blown away. It's kind of like the same thing. Pastor Ben's really good. Anytime he sees a veteran, he thanks them for what they do for our country. I think every time we see dads, you see a dad with a stroller, man, you know how much it takes for a dad to walk down the mall with a stroller with like 3 kids. Like, there is something going on inside of him that's self-sacrificial. It's like, man, dude, you rock, man. That's a minimal thing, but really just taking time to invest in somebody. We're supposed to be disciple makers. And I think we make a lot of, that's a whole nother thing that I'm passionate about, but we make discipleship out to be so much more than it is. It really is just encouraging people to be like Jesus. And that can be as simple as having coffee. You and I have had a lot of coffee just talking about stuff. And I think that's part of the heart of, that's how we change fatherlessness. I can't go back and change somebody's relationship with their dad. But what I can do is I can be for them just a, hey, you got the goods, man, and encourage you, tell you what I feel like God would say to you. And I think men in the church have that they can do.
Well, that is good. And I think it's really succinct, and I'm glad you touched on that because discipleship and accountability among men is something we really want to push in the coming weeks, specifically at our next barbecue.
Awesome.
But we'll finish up on the lightning round and get you back to what you got to
Okay.
do. We appreciate you taking the time. If there's one skill you
One
think
skill.
any man should have, what would it be and why?
I think
Can't be
every
changing a tire. You can't be making a cup of coffee.
okay. I think every man should know how to sharpen a knife, and I think every
That's out of
man.
left field. All right.
I
like
think
that.
I like that.
there needs it's a lost art. And there's just something innately masculine about sharpening a knife to the point where you can shave your arm or just slide it down a piece of paper and watch it fall off. Like I think that I remember as a kid that was one of the first like man skills that I felt like I mastered as a kid. It just
Do you go old school whetstone, or do you
Oh,
have your
yeah.
own personal like?
oh yeah, you like whetstone all the way down to the leather strap. You can get those things picking razor sharp. I love that.
It's pretty legit.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that's something.
If you could eat one food every day for the rest of your life,
Maria's Tacos.
that was quick.
Oh, are you kidding?
Maria's Tacos.
I just said it the other day. Like we were somewhere and I was having Maria's Tacos. Like if I could eat this every day, if I was stranded on a desert island and all I could eat was one thing, I would eat
You
these.
went there. You closed your eyes and everything.
Absolutely.
Back there.
Oh,
we
my
talking
gosh.
asada?
Where-
Oh,
adobado,
carne
Where
asada.
are these tacos at?
Maria's Tacos. Have you
never
never
had.
been there?
I've never
Kings
been.
Canyon
Oh
and
my
Clovis.
gosh. Okay, she's opening a store.
I saw that. It's a brick
I
and
just
mortar
got
now.
she's got a brick and mortar shop, the best tacos in town. And I know this because we had a taco truck Sunday. Pastor Ben and I, we needed to do research. So for like 4 weeks, like every other day, we would go to all the taco trucks around this town. By a mile, hers are the best.
Mm.
Absolutely the best.
We'll have
And
to
she's
do
awesome.
some offsite research to confirm this later.
Yeah,
We'll make it a special segment.
we're gonna eat tacos the next time we do it.
Dude, absolutely.
I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I love tacos.
Sweet.
Although San Diego, I don't know, man.
I've never been to San Diego for
San Diego,
tacos.
they got any hole in the wall you can find is typically.
They are closer to the border.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
No, it's. I mean,
Maria's Tacos
authentic.
are authentic. They are the real deal.
Yeah. Although I will say, I think I've had a decent amount of tacos in Fresno, from like taco roach coaches and stuff.
Yeah.
Been pretty
No,
well.
that's where the best ones are.
Yeah,
Always.
always.
Yeah, all the best ones we had that we tried were all from taco trucks. Like the sit down restaurants.
Not the same.
I don't know what it is about those trucks. I don't know if it's the exhaust mixed in with the. I don't know. It's something about
Something
it. It's
magical about it.
absolutely. There's something in the sauce.
We might have to do some offsite research where Aaron and I just, take that burden on ourselves and go and
Yeah,
taste tacos around town
it's
for you
pretty
guys.
important.
Prove my theory.
Anything else?
I've got nothing. That was good.
All right. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Play the Man podcast. If you like what you see and you want to continue to support the podcast, please hit like and subscribe and catch us for upcoming episodes and interviews. We are constantly looking for new content. We've got a lot of exciting guests and a lot of exciting content we were planning on bringing on the show. If you're a member of the Legacy Christian Church or you're just a guy that wants to be in fellowship and eat cheeseburgers, we have a barbecue or tacos. It's cheeseburgers this time, but in the future, if someone's got the gift. We have a barbecue this Saturday, the 24th of August at 11 a.m. at the Legacy Christian Church. We'd love to see you there. It's $15. That just helps us cover costs and do things like this, put on podcasts. So $15 at the door. If you can't pay, hit us up. I've already had guys hit me up. We will make a way for you to be there. But we thank you guys for tuning in, and we want to remind you guys, if you fix the man, you fix the world. And we want to encourage all of you guys out there to play the man, or pay the man, play the man, and be the man. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome.